this is Julia of Geeked Colorado. We are here today at Colorado Festival of Horror, and I have Dean Gates sitting here beside of me. Dean is best known as a makeup artist, doing things from Star Trek to Adam's Family Values, Coneheads.
Oh yeah.
So you've done some really cool projects.
Some fun stuff. Yes, well, you mentioned Coneheads. I mean, if you're at the horror convention, I wasn't thinking about it. Coneheads was a fun show. I had just started working at Paramount. I've been in the union for a year or so. I was there working on probably the first season of Deep Space Nine, and I guess that would have been like the fourth season of Next Generation as a day checker, as they call it, or just going and working in the lab, doing sculptures, doing mold making. And I met Michael Westmore, and then Ed French had recommended me, and June Westmore had recommended me to come see Mike, and so I was working on stuff with them. And the season wrapped on Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. They wrapped the season around April. They shoot from July through April, about 10 months out of the year to do 24 episodes. So we wrapped in April, and then Coneheads was shooting, and you had the three, the husband, wife, and the child, and so there was actors handling that. It's Dave Miller. I apologize if I get the name wrong. Dave Miller supervising the cones on that show. When they had the scenes on the planet, which a lot got cut from the movie, but when they go to the planet, we had like 50 makeup artists working with cones. We had, and they have the key people are beautifully done, and the next people back are a little less nicely done, and the people in the way back are just slip over the rubber heads because you're not close, you can't tell the detail. But I made up. There was a choir of young ladies that sang behind the Emperor. I think it was Dave. He was from Second City TV. Played the Emperor of the Planet, and they were always present. All of them were Playboy playmates who were friends of Dan Aykroyd's wife. I think it was Donna Dixon. I believe this is why she was the ex-playmate. And I had a lady the lady I made up was very nice. She hosted some kind of Playboy After Dark show where she interviewed people, but she was just delightful, and she told me all kinds of stories about the Playboy Mansion, Hugh Hefner, and his wife at the time, and the dogs and Viagra and everything else. Anyway, so it was quite the interesting experience working on that. And then we did a bunch of music videos. One day they did a music video where Dan Aykroyd, he was dressed like Robert Palmer, and all the Conehead girls were dressed like in the black dresses, they're doing that. They did a ZZ Top where they had the beards on and twirling the guitars, and I forget what other themes we did, but they had one day where it was a Saturday we shot the music video guy come in and do all that. So it was I was kind of ancillarily involved with it, but the movie is delightful. I got to say, the comedy in there, all the actors, all the up and coming people, Jason Alexander and just everybody was in side things. One day I was taking Colleen Camp's cone off. She had a bit part where she played a secretary, which I think was cut out of the movie. And Colleen Camp, of course, goes all the way back to Valley Girl. She was one of the girls that visit the camp in Apocalypse Now. They get flown in, and then God, there's another great film she did. It was directed by Stephen Bogdanovich, kind of a screwball comedy. I can't think of the name. Anyway, great actress. I think she married one of the producers that worked at Paramount. So she was in a small part, and I got to take her cone off that night. I was like, because when you do applications and makeups, it might take you 2 to 3 hours to put someone in makeup. It could take you an hour to get them out without hurting their skin. You got to be very careful because things are glued on with medical adhesives. They're very secure, and you want to be gently removed so they don't get their skin irritated. I mean, some people have leather skin. Mark Alamo who played Goldacott on Star Trek, his skin was like shoe leather. You could rub him with sandpaper or a Dremel tool and it wouldn't hurt him. But other people are very sensitive, so you got to take it off. So I'm taking it off, and Dan Aykroyd's getting his makeup taken off, and I just heard this great conversation they were having about the hopes for the movie and how it felt like I was like sitting on the inside somewhere hearing everyone talk about the trials and tribulations of writing and shooting a movie like that. And Dan Aykroyd's a very intellectual guy, so he was just kind of giving his philosophy and theory about things, and it was kind of cool just to kind of being a fly on the wall, being there and hearing all this.
So that's really cool, getting to be, like you said, that fly on the wall, getting to hear all the like stories and stuff. And with the makeups that you've done, which one has been the most technically difficult for you to do?
Wow, some are challenging in different ways. I did an old age makeup for a commercial where the guy had to progressively age like 3 or 4 stages from being in his 20s to his 30s to his 60s, and then finally he's like really old, like in his 70s. You got to plan those makeups out and get all your processes together and the mold making aspects of it and how it's all going to fit together, and get all your sculptures together and see if they match and how things progress. So sometimes those things are more technical with the mold making aspects. When you go to do a sculpture on someone's life cast, you've got it set up, you've done the sculpture, and now you've got to mold it in a way or break it down that the clay is obviously flexible,
Mm-hmm.
but then the molds are going to be rigid, and then, excuse me, then the foam rubber is flexible. But when you go to lock your molds together, you want to make sure that they don't truly lock where curves wrap around, or you can't pull the mold apart. So you got to design everything that it all fits and kind of goes like a cap, but not lock onto it so it doesn't pull apart, because you got rigid, and there's something soft inside. So you want to make sure you can always pull apart to get the soft stuff out, which is going to be your appliance. So there's technical aspects of that are difficult. Then there's sometimes there are design elements where you want to always up your game and do something a little unique and different, and you want to challenge yourself. Then on top of that, you've got time constraints, because it is a business. You have to be an artist or a craftsperson, so you're thinking with the right side of your brain. You got to be a business person and a manager and a time person, where you're thinking with the left side of your brain. And I understand now why artists and actors have managers and have agents. They get to go in and fight the dirty work of fighting for what they got to do, and then the artist just walks in later and not be the bad guy, and say, well, they run us out of money or something. They walk in and say, hey, I'm cool, I'm going to work with you. I think I mentioned earlier at another time, I worked on several projects that were a little challenged, and the people that came before me had some dust-ups with the producers, and they end up leaving the show. And then I come in, and they don't have that experience, and I just follow through and have a great time, and everything works fine. But I don't have the baggage of being the guy that maybe had to work a better deal, or maybe felt they were getting ripped off, or how you negotiate. So there's a business aspect to it, and you got to be an artist. And many times those two things don't come together in people. And you got to have time management. Then you got to have good people skills and get along with folks and not be difficult on set. Producer wants to hire you. It's like an insurance policy. They want to make sure that they don't have to worry about you later.
Mm-hmm.
You want to take care of problems. There's not going to be any issues, and then you're going to be creative, get the job done, and you're going to do it efficiently, on time, and on budget.
So when you're talking about the skills needed to basically be successful in the industry, you're also talking about how you had recently relocated to Colorado. So I'm kind of curious, for up-and-comers, what is the industry like here in Colorado? Is there opportunities, or do you still have to do a lot like back in LA or Miami or wherever?
Well, I'm not qualified really to answer that. I'm so new. I met a lot of great filmmakers and some of the producers and people that are working here doing things now. When I came along, I was active from 1980 to 95, full-time in the business. Since 95, and that's been a lot of years now, I've not been a makeup effects person. I've been a producer and director, and I've done my own projects in a small market where I had to go around and scrounge up work and do things. Before, when I wanted to work, you pretty much had to come to Los Angeles. I mean, movies were now it used to be that movies only could be made where they're large studios because the equipment was so cumbersome. The lights had to be very bright, the film speeds were very slow, and you had to have a built studio, you had to have heavy equipment. Cameras were like the size of a VW engine, they had blimps on them, they had to be lifted in cranes, and there was no handheld. It was all there was a whole industry of infrastructure and a factory built around making movies. So if you wanted to work in the movies, you pretty much had to go to Los Angeles at one time, or maybe New York. There was some production going on in New York. When I started to come along, there were some people building these type of facilities outside of LA. There, Wilmington, North Carolina. Dino De Laurentiis had his studio there. He cranked out a lot of product. The studio's still going strong. Now it's called, I think, the Carolina Screen Gym Studios. So I knew that I had to go where the work was back in the 80s and 90s, and I ended up, and I thought, well, even if I was successful outside of Hollywood, people always say, well, have you done anything in Hollywood? I felt I had to go to get some legitimacy in my career. So at the time, I literally, after I started getting offers, I packed up, my family. I had, my wife was 8 months pregnant with the youngest son. I had 2 older stepsons. We literally loaded up out of the Carolinas in a U-Haul and drove across country and bounced around. And I got there, and expenses were more and rent was more, and I had to hustle to get work. And when I wasn't working on movies, I did sculptures for theme park development. I helped sculpt all the environments behind the Mirage Hotel when it was built in 1989 in Vegas. I worked on doing dinosaurs for theme parks. I worked for doing stuff for a Japanese theme park based on companies that were doing theme park development. So there was always jobs for sculptors and things, but not necessarily always in the movies. So you had to just hustle and do what you had to do to kind of stay relevant and be doing your craft. And then the movie projects would pop back up, and then there'd be waves of things happening. It is tough when you go to a market, maybe there's only 1 or 2 people doing things that, if they're not busy, you have nothing to do. Unless you're doing your own projects. But now we come to today. A lot of people don't want to hear this, but anyone can do something, film it, and get it on YouTube, get it out there in social media. There have been people that have been discovered by doing great work and presenting it even in their hometowns. So you have that opportunity, but then you still have to motivate, have faith you can achieve it, have the passion to go for it, not take no for an answer. I've had some people say, and I relate to this, it becomes an addiction. It's an addiction to work in production. It's an addiction to work on movies. There's something exciting about it, and you just keep going for that next high of doing that. And I realized it happened to me when I was a high school student. I started editing my little 8mm movies I was making. When I started juxtapositioning different shots together to see a car come down the street, go around the corner, do this, do that, I started creating a timeline out of various shots that didn't exist in reality. I got a high from that. I actually got a tingly sensation that I chased that the rest of my adult life, trying to get that, of creating something that is, and I had a hobby in magic. I loved doing card tricks, rope tricks. I do mental illusions today just for fun. And Tom Savini had a hobby in magic. A lot of makeup effects people, because makeup effects is like the magic trick within the magic trick. Making movies is a magic trick. Editing is a magic trick. If you're in production, sound editing, everything. How you make things happen. And in many ways, things are easier today for people to do professional-looking work with very little cost. Compared to the hundreds of thousands of dollars in equipment it used to take to do things.
Sure.
But folks don't want to say, well, I don't know, I gotta, whatever, struggle or do my thing. I say, well, there's the rub. Are you willing to put your family in a U-Haul and drag them across country to a new place? So, are you willing to do whatever it takes? And, you might fail, you might not make it. I had people talk me out of it years before I came to LA, because I had an opportunity to work on Scarface. I was a production assistant in Miami, and they were going to go back out to LA to shoot. And I said, hey, if I were to be out in LA, could I get a job? Be a PA for you out there. And the guy said, you know what, I can't promise anything, but if you show up, just go, come. And I was talked out of it. Not that I was talked out of it, but it's just someone said, oh, don't do that, stay here, it's safe, it's whatever, And I didn't. And then a few years later, when I had the opportunity, I went. Yeah. And it was great. But now, I do a lot more writing. You can get to a higher level of writing scripts, getting to producers. I mean, social media, Zoom, pandemic. I mean, one thing they talked about even 10 years ago, I forget, the lady wrote a book. She had been a high-end producer. And she said how the industry had changed, where it used to be everyone took meetings all the time. You took meetings. Then once social media and texting came in, people just said, no, just text me, let's talk, let's do a Zoom call, even before COVID hit. But now with COVID, it's possible to get on Zoom and arrange a lot of things if you already have the connections. I mean, people know you or do things. So, but I haven't been here long enough to say, here is the state of things in Colorado or Denver. I wish I was, but I can't really answer that right now.
That's okay. It's still, great to kind of hear that, letting people know, what opportunities are out there. You're right. COVID has changed our world and, media and everything. So I want to thank you for talking to me today, for taking time out of your busy day. I know, you've got things to get to. And then just if people want to basically follow up with you or see what you've done, where can they catch you online?
Yeah, you can just catch me. I'm on Facebook, Dean Gates. There's a picture of my face there. If you go into IMDb and see my picture there, it's the same picture of Dean Gates on Facebook. So match up those pictures of that gray-head guy, and you'll know it's me.
All right, thank you.
All right, Julia, my pleasure, and best of luck and congratulations on all your success with your podcast.
Thanks.